I want to talk about transitions. Transitions. Transitions are things that people use to bridge one idea into another. We're talking about one thing, we got to work our way over to the other. Transitions are something they use in film, they use it in television. Webinars occasionally transition, and speakers transition, especially when it's a group presentation. So I was coaching a series of presentations where each multi-day event had strings of presenters, and everyone gets really hung up on, well, how do we transition from this to that? And also I'm coaching competitive sales pitches, interviews, shortlist presentations, those things where different people compete to win work. Those are often team presentations, and there's a lot of sections. We're going to look at the project, we're going to look at the approach, we're going to look at the budget, we're going to look at the schedule, we're going to look at all these different issues. And so you've got different speakers, and they seem so hung up on this idea of, well, how do we transition from this to this? And I want to give you an idea. Aside from chapter heads inside of presentations that let you know we're going from this to this, which can be simply just bring up the chapter head and go, transitions are less and less useful. They're less and less needed. They're more and more a drag and an annoyance, a waste of time. So let's look at this from the context of film. In the 70s, well, I should go back to the beginning. People, when film first came out, when was that? Black and white. Well, the world was still black and white then. And people weren't sure how confusing it would be to be in one place on a film scene and then suddenly be in another. So what if we were in the house and suddenly we were at the office? Well, we'd have to show them go there. Now, if you watch 70s television, you're going to see something really interesting, like you watch a cop show and they're in the precinct and they're talking about making the bust. And so they will show them grab their jackets and move off camera. Then you'll see them go down the elevator and you'll see them come outside from outside the building and get in a car. They'll have a quick moment where they're driving and we see the background moving. You'll see them get out of the car, walk into the building, go up the elevator, down the hall, and then break open the door from the outside in the hallway and then cut to the inside as they come in. And they would go through all that steps because they didn't want you to be confused. So editors over the years have been experimenting. What if we make it a little shorter, take a little of this out? We'd have more room for content if we take that stuff out. Well, today's TV shows, they're at the precinct and they're going to say, let's bust those guys. Boom, the door's open and they're in. None of the transition or less of the transition, not unless it's valuable to the storytelling, because the transition isn't needed. Nobody really needs to see that. So let's now think about the news. There was a much longer transition set in the news when I was a child versus what there is now. We would say we're done at the Capitol, and now I'm going to wrap. That's the news for the national news, and we're going to go over to Jim with the weather, and Jim's going to tell us in the weather, and we've got a glimpse of the weather. Jim, hey, thanks there, Dean. This is great. I'm now going to talk to you about the weather. Here we go. And there was all this transitioning over, like you couldn't grasp the shift from the national news to the weather or the sports. They do less and less and less of that. It's very fast. The main reason that people do those transitions in the news is to have a little social camaraderie, a little relaxed conversation, but they don't need it for understanding. What I'm doing as a speaker coach is cutting that out. I'm reducing it. I'm using it if it's useful, like to show relationships, a little synergy between a couple speakers when you're switching from one to another. But mostly I just cut it out. We're talking about one subject, next person comes in. And when you get people talking together, you get more of a sense of synergy. But you don't need to work your way from one subject to another as much as you think that you do. So I'm going to suggest try taking them out. And then if it seems too abrupt, put something smaller in. But the smallest transition, the better, because we do, as a society, especially our TikTok, YouTube world, we're learning to process very short concepts quickly. And it is a drag to leave your screen where you just watched a whole bunch of Instagram videos, and then you go on to a presentation that has to set up the next thing, work its way over to it. We are ready for the cut. So take out the transitions and you're going to have better speeches, webinars, and programming.